The race for the White House 2020. You can now add one more Democrat to the field of declared candidates who want to face President Trump next year.
Hello, everyone.
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, she just made her entry into the presidential race official, proclaiming herself a candidate for the White House and on, as you can see, a very snowy, sub-freezing day in the Twin Cities.
I am running for every American. I am running for you. And I promise you this, as your president, I will look you in the eye. I will tell you what I think. I will focus on getting things done. That's what I've done my whole life. And no matter what, I'll lead from the heart.
CNN's Suzanne Malveaux joins us live in Minneapolis. Suzanne, it looks freezing there. You guys are all troopers standing out there in that snow. I kept watching it pile up on Klobuchar's head. Good turnout there, despite the very Minnesota conditions. What does Klobuchar say she will bring to this race?
It's quite amazing when you think about that. You see like that kind of snow cap on her head there. Yeah, she stood out there, no gloves, no hat to deliver this address. It's on and out, balmy 17 degrees. But despite that, hundreds of people came out this afternoon. It was an incredible display of strength and grit as the senator delivered her message there, officially kicking off the race. I had a chance to ask her actually what makes her so unique, what does she bring to the table here when she's got such formidable opponents. And she said, look, she is the one who's delivered for Minnesota many, many times. She's never lost a race here. The people here in her home state love her. They know she gets a lot done. On Capitol Hill, she has a reputation for working across the aisle with Republicans to pass lots and lots of legislation. So that is what she's emphasizing. That was her pitch today, and it really is her introduction to the rest of the country as to who she is.
Senator Amy Klobuchar today jumping into the 2020 waters, making the announcement along the Mississippi River in her home state of Minnesota.
Let us cross the river of our divides and walk across our sturdy bridge to higher ground.
The 58-year-old third-term senator talked up her heartland heritage and her ability to get things done.
I will look you in the eye. I will tell you what I think, and no matter what, I'll lead from the heart.
Klobuchar joins an increasingly crowded Democratic field, including fellow Senate Judiciary Committee members Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. It is from that committee perch last fall that Klobuchar captured the national spotlight with her questioning of then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh.
So you're saying there's never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before or part of what happened?
You're asking about, blackout. I don't know. Have you?
The exchange, for which Kavanaugh later apologized, went viral.
So could you answer the question, Judge? That's not happened. Is that your answer?
Yeah, and I'm curious if you have.
I have no drinking problem, Judge.
Klobuchar later said she was stunned by the moment, which also let her discuss her own experience growing up with an alcoholic father.
My dad, who's 90 now, struggled with it throughout his life and finally got treatment and is sober.
With her national profile elevated, Klobuchar coasted to re-election in 2018 with 60% of the vote, winning 42 counties carried by Donald Trump in 2016.
You go where it is uncomfortable, not just where it's comfortable. And that's how we're going to win the Midwest.
A graduate of Yale University, Klobuchar interned for fellow Minnesotan Walter Mondale in his Senate office.
I thank Vice President Mondale, who's here with us, who has been a mentor to me.
Klobuchar says Mondale's choice of running mate in 1984, Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman on a major party ticket, opened her eyes to the future of women in politics.
For me, it was a moment when I knew that anything and everything was possible for women in the United States of America.
In 1998, Klobuchar was elected attorney of Minnesota's most populous county. 8 years later, she became the first woman elected to represent the state in the U.S. Senate.
I left Minnesota with my husband and our daughter and loaded up our Saturn with our college dishes and a shower curtain from 1985.
On Capitol Hill, Klobuchar has partnered with Republicans on issues such as online privacy, workplace harassment, and prescription drug costs, earning respect across the aisle. Bipartisan credentials, Klobuchar hopes, will give her an advantage in the campaign to come.
And Anna, she said that she would tackle things like climate change, cybersecurity, as well as immigration reform, those being critical issues, but not to the far left. She does not believe in abolishing ICE or Medicare for all. So it really is going to be a test to see if she is the kind of Democrat that the primary voters are looking for. Anna?
All right, Suzanne Malveaux in Minneapolis for us. Thank you. Go get warm. So now Klobuchar is joining an already jam-packed field, kicking off their bids officially or unofficially, and more than double the number of declared candidates are still thinking about running. But today, some of Klobuchar's new rivals answered their critics, including the one in the White House. Let's bring in CNN political analyst, senior White House correspondent for Bloomberg News, Margaret Talev, and White House correspondent for The Atlantic, Elena Plott. Ladies, we'll come back to Klobuchar in just a second, but Elizabeth Warren hit back hard at President Trump today, and I want to show that to our viewers.
You know, here's what bothers me. By the time we get to 2020, Donald Trump may not even be president. In fact, he may not even be a free person.
Margaret, that comes after the president lashed out at Warren again this weekend about her mentions of Native American ancestry. Did she rattle Trump, or is this exactly the kind of fight he wants?
You know, and it's a great question. I mean, he does enjoy having people to shadow box with, and Elizabeth Warren so far has been probably his favorite target, if not certainly one of his favorite targets. From her perspective, though, she's probably in a stronger position when she's boxing Trump than when she's a defensive crouch, trying to defend her own sort of past in terms of her, Native American status on applications and that sort of thing. So for her, these first couple of days of the official campaign are, again, yet another reset effort to get off of the defensive onto the offensive. And I think for the president, this ever-growing number of Democratic candidates, he's trying to test each and every one of them. He took sort of a less enthusiastic jab at Klobuchar only a couple minutes ago in sort of a climate change construct that I'm sure we'll talk about.
So if Elizabeth Warren is of the fight fire with fire mindset, Senator Cory Booker is taking a decidedly different approach than her. Let's listen to what he told CNN.
I'm not here to try to emulate the tactics of a president. I'm not trying to match him, ugly comment for ugly comment, bashing for bashing. I'm focusing on the people.
Elena, can we expect this high road approach to last when Booker could end up facing more than a dozen challengers?
You know, what Booker is doing well, I think, Anna, and same with Senator Klobuchar, is trying to emulate the kind of person who they think maybe disenchanted white suburban voters would be willing to vote for in a general election. As we saw in many Senate races this past November, there is a healthy number of Republicans who are willing to look outside of a Donald Trump endorsed candidate or Trump himself when it comes to who they want to lead this country in 2020. So while Elizabeth Warren's fight fire with fire tactics, as you aptly put it, could play well to a very progressive base that is agitating for quite left-wing proposals such as, for instance, the Green New Deal, it remains hard to believe that that's the sort of message that would resonate with a wide variety of voters in states like Michigan, in states like Wisconsin and Minnesota come 2020. So even if Booker and Klobuchar and others like them seem like the quieter voices as this primary kicks off, they could be the ones who are more able to prevail in the end because of that disposition.
Klobuchar being from the Midwest, jumping in from Minnesota, that is one of the few Midwestern states Donald Trump did not win, but it was close. She may be best known nationally for her clash with Brett Kavanaugh at his Supreme Court nomination, which Suzanne highlighted. Margaret, how do you think she stacks up?
I I think it's really too soon to know how any of these folks is going to stack up against one another. We're approaching sort of that dozen, but there are probably still many more announcements to come after that. So as Donald Trump showed us only a few years ago, if you have a 17-way primary, you remember when back in 2015 everybody was like, oh, it's going to be Jeb Bush is going to be the nominee. You throw 17 people into a contest and the sort of base of voters, the instincts, the way they interplay against one another becomes a really different calculus than if it's 3 or 4 candidates. So I think you're starting to see the battle line shape up, kind of the firebrand campaign against the I'm going to take the high road campaign. There's a pack of female candidates. There are a pack of African American candidates. There are potentially a widening pack of white male candidates, people with a lot of experience, people with a little. If the field gets large enough, the way that the way the kind of political insiders in D.C. Anticipate these candidates will act could really change dramatically.
Let's turn to Bernie Sanders, because he's not in the race just yet. And a poll out this past week from Monmouth shows that Democrats say he tops the list of who they don't want seeking the Democratic nomination. Elena, does he have enough support to make another go of it, or is his lane already taken?
The thing about Bernie Sanders is he still has quite a number of small dollar donors that really boosted his candidacy in 2016 that I do think would still be willing to get behind him. But what Elizabeth Warren did well in her announcement speech was, without using his name, stake claim to that progressive lane. Of course, she opened her campaign, her announcement rally with 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, putting forth sort of that signal that she can be the candidate to navigate the class warfare that has really dominated, political rhetoric in the past few years. So I do think somebody like Senator Sanders has a lot to worry about as he's still mulling his decision. It's quite possible that by the time he gets in, voters who are looking for a candidate that way might just feel like it's deja vu listening to him speak when Senator Warren has been on the trail for several days or even weeks by that point, touting that message herself.
All right, Elena Plott, Margaret Tolliver, good to have both of you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As the standoff on Capitol Hill continues, President Trump heads to the border city of El Paso tomorrow. Up next, what people there tell us about his calls for a wall. You're live in the CNN newsroom.